July 1947, Roswell, New Mexico. In this small town, many believe that the wreckage of an unidentified flying object was found. Discussions about what happened that summer night have been ongoing for many years. At the center of attention is a former officer of the United States military intelligence, who claims that not only do UFOs exist, but that the American military is using advanced technologies, allegedly of extraterrestrial origin. This man, Philip Corso, knows what he is talking about, as he held fragments of technical devices and saw the bodies of aliens who perished in the crash in Roswell. The day after the events in Roswell, in the summer of 1947, Major Philip Corso was patrolling the military base at Fort Riley, Kansas. At that moment, he encountered something that challenged all his perceptions of Earth and the heavens. By that time, Corso had already made a decent career, becoming a respected intelligence officer and a team commander, and he literally had his finger on the nuclear button. Corso was convinced that in one of the crates in an abandoned building was a being from another planet. In his book, titled The Day After Roswell, he described the events of that day and other revelations. The book was published in 1997 and immediately made it to the New York Times bestseller list. During the presentation, 5 colonels approached him, confirming the authenticity of everything he described. Philip Corso passed away in 1998, but the materials published in his book continue to spark controversy. Today, for the first time, the story of his military career will be told, along with sensational materials about UFOs. In 1942, a year after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Philip Corso, a boy from a small town in Pennsylvania, was drafted into the Army. During World War II, he became an intelligence officer and then, at the age of only 29, a counterintelligence officer in Rome. His task was to seek out and eliminate Soviet agents to ensure that after the war, the government of Italy would be friendly and not communist. This was a significant step in his career, and Corso was considered a very promising officer. By April 1947, he returned for retraining at the United States Army Intelligence School at Fort Riley. 3 months later, in July 1947, the fateful night arrived that turned his entire life upside down. At the age of 32, Corso was the duty officer responsible for the security of the base. That evening, 5 trucks carrying the wreckage of a mysterious aerial object that had fallen in Roswell arrived at the base in Kansas. Corso, as a true scout, was intrigued by this cargo. He recounts that around 11 o'clock in the evening, he entered the building where the cargo from Roswell was stored. The duty guard reported that he had peeked into one of the crates but could not understand what was inside. Corso decided to take a look for himself. He saw crates resembling coffins, so small that they appeared to be for children. Lifting the tarp, he saw what resembled a large body of a humanoid creature with a big head and eyes. The body looked human, but it was disproportionately short. As Corso recalled, this was his first encounter with extraterrestrial civilization, and it did not leave a significant impression on him. Later, he came into possession of top-secret materials and alien artifacts, which, according to him, became the basis for a new global technological explosion. However, in 1947, a whole decade remained before these events. In 1950, during the Korean War, Philip Corso's assumptions about extraterrestrial beings were confirmed by new facts. He joined General Douglas MacArthur's staff as a United Nations specialist in planning artillery strikes. After the ceasefire in 1953, Philip Corso remained in Asia as an intelligence officer, dealing with the repatriation of American prisoners of war. He met Corso when he was working in the POW target program in the Far East Forces under the command of General Douglas MacArthur. Later, Corso continued his work in the National Security Council as a staff officer for President Dwight Eisenhower. According to records in military archives, in July 1953, Corso was promoted to the rank of lieutenant colonel. He claimed to be a trusted advisor to Eisenhower and that he was the one who informed the president about the growing penetration of the KGB into the CIA. Corso recalled how he loudly shouted about this at the National Security Council. According to him, Eisenhower appointed him commander of his personal combat unit in appreciation for his services to the country. In 1957, Corso became the commander of an artillery battalion at the Red Canyon Missile Range. By October of that same year, he was already commanding a division in West Germany, developing new strategies for targeting nuclear strikes. Corso proved to everyone that he could obey orders, but he also showed initiative as he was the commander of a nuclear weapons battery. If a war with the Soviet Union had begun in the 1950s, when he was serving in Germany, he would have made unilateral decisions regarding the use of nuclear weapons that were under his control. However, after returning from Germany, Corso's career took a sharp turn. A talented intelligence officer, a fearless counterintelligence agent, and an artillery commander who oversaw the most powerful weapons in the world, he unexpectedly became a reservist in the National Guard. Since October 1960, Corso had effectively retired, continuing to serve part-time as an advisor to a National Guard unit. Some might have thought that someone was dissatisfied with him, but Corso's supporters believed that he was being prepared for the most important, most secret mission. Now his career was managed by Lieutenant General Arthur Trudeau, who became a powerful mentor for Corso. Trudeau, a West Point graduate of 1924, quickly earned a reputation as an officer with a forward-thinking perspective and a strong understanding of high technology. During the Cold War, he was one of the first to begin training intelligence officers in technology. In 1958, he was appointed head of research and development in the armed forces, and when Trudeau needed assistance, he chose Corso. Corso recalled how the general called him and said he was organizing a foreign technology department and appointing him as its head. This moment in Corso's military career can easily be verified by looking at archival records. He did indeed work at the Pentagon, and he had an office there. There was even a personnel list confirming his work for General Trudeau. However, after Corso's appointment to the Pentagon, tracking his career through the archives became more complicated. It turned out to be quite difficult to confirm his claims. Corso wrote that his work at the Pentagon involved analyzing information on foreign military technology, such as French helicopter armaments or British technologies, including the recreation of a vertical takeoff and landing fighter. With his involvement, these technologies were recreated from start to finish. The military conducted a series of projects over the years, during which enemy technological equipment was studied by American scientists. One of Corso's tasks was to study these foreign technologies, for example, the French ones, and recreate them. If something interesting was found, it was incorporated into the American technological program. The recreation of technologies played a crucial role in Cold War espionage. The Soviet Union utilized captured military jet aircraft from the United States to recreate American technologies, while the United States employed Soviet MiGs for a similar purpose. Philip Corso, a former military intelligence officer, was engaged in the study of foreign technologies, but in July 1961, his life changed dramatically. General Trudeau summoned him to his office and issued an unusual order to study the technologies obtained in 1947 at the site of an extraterrestrial spacecraft crash in Roswell, New Mexico. Trudeau handed Corso a file cabinet containing irrefutable evidence of alien visits to Earth and the existence of extraterrestrial technologies that, according to Corso, could change the entire world. He recalls, "In 1947, I saw the bodies of aliens who perished in the crash near the military base in Roswell. This description matched the testimonies of other witnesses who claimed to have seen the crash with their own eyes. They described small alien beings resembling humans, with 4 fingers on their hands, thin legs, disproportionately large heads, and large almond-shaped eyes. These descriptions were not coincidental. They appeared in classified materials collected as a result of a government investigation, the origins of which have yet to be established." Corso insisted that he had not told anyone about his observations at Fort Riley. In the summer of 1961, while being a lieutenant colonel, he was assigned to a Pentagon project that compelled him to revisit events from long ago. He led research work at the Pentagon, obtaining a position with significant authority. The main goal was to achieve military superiority for the United States by dozens of times, he shares. "We were confident that we would do it. We had an organization, we had money, we had brains. During the Cold War, the government was concerned that the Russians might gain access to extraterrestrial materials, or worse yet, that aliens could use their powerful technologies to invade Earth. Corso claimed that an ordinary file cabinet contained extraordinary artifacts from the Roswell crash site. Among them was a piece of super-strong metallic fabric, possibly protecting extraterrestrial pilots, a rod that apparently shot a burning red beam, and an alien helmet, likely used for transmitting thoughts or controlling the spacecraft. Corso also discovered a set of miniature electrical circuits that could have been ready-to-use chip prototypes, flexible wires transmitting light, and lenses allowing for vision in the dark. Presumably, they were extracted from the eyes of extraterrestrial beings. To make sense of the mysterious contents of the filing cabinet, Corso delved into secret government documents that reported on extraterrestrial technologies discovered in Roswell. According to his claims, some of the most prominent scientists in the world, such as Wernher von Braun and Robert Oppenheimer, had access to the crash site. Corso recalls that Lieutenant General Rudo gave him a blank check to assemble his own team. "I could include anyone I wanted in this team, engineers, scientists, and even, and this was my request, Germans." He asked to bring in several German specialists. Based on a thorough study of the reports on Roswell, Corso developed his theory about the principle of operation of the extraterrestrial spacecraft. The colonel believed that the spacecraft could make jumps, asserting, "It did not fly from somewhere to Earth, it jumped to us." Allegedly, there existed some wave around the spacecraft that allowed it to function not only as a spacecraft but also as a time machine. To cover such vast distances, the ship had to go beyond the familiar space-time continuum, fall out of it, and suddenly appear at a new point. In Philip Corso's personal notebooks were sketches that visually confirmed his concept. He suggested that the alien ship was controlled by a telepathic helmet that hugged the creature's skull. This helmet, in his opinion, could be turned, aligning its sensors with various areas of the brain and the images that arose. Corso insisted that he had completed the initial stage of research and was ready to move on to the next phase. He intended to pass the extraterrestrial technologies obtained in Roswell to certain specialists for further development. Imagine what would happen if the spacecraft crashed on Earth and fragments of extraterrestrial technologies became available to Earthlings. Corso allegedly discovered them and distributed them to research laboratories, which, according to him, led to a complete transformation of the most advanced technologies on Earth. In the early 60s, American military power was focused on winning the Cold War. Lieutenant Colonel Corso wanted to utilize alien technologies obtained in Roswell in this fight. By the end of summer 1961, he began contacting military laboratories regarding extraterrestrial artifacts. These laboratories also employed civilian scientists who processed classified material. Corso felt comfortable working with them, as access to classified projects was the concern of the laboratories themselves. In America, there were numerous high-tech laboratories where civilian scientists worked on classified military projects. Los Alamos, the site of the Manhattan Project, was perhaps the most famous of them. In 1961, Fort Belvoir in Virginia was developing night vision systems as part of 10 projects. Corso claimed that this was the first laboratory to which he transferred extraterrestrial technologies. However, Corso could not openly state this. To convey the importance of his findings, he needed to specifically approach those who understood these technologies. According to Corso, witnesses from Roswell reported that the alien ship used a technology known as image enhancement. If someone entered the ship and looked back, the outside world appeared just as bright as during the day, even if it was nighttime. Corso also claimed that there were lenses removed from the eyes of aliens that had the ability to enhance brightness. Although it is unknown how these two characteristics are related, he believed that their potential value was undeniable. By the end of summer 1961, he showed researchers at Fort Belvoir these lenses and other technologies extracted from the crash site in Roswell. This was a technology whose development could be traced back in retrospect to World War II, demonstrating a geometric progression in its advancement over all those years. Can this, as Corso claims, be attributed to the Roswell findings? In his opinion, it was indeed so. He stated that he could not independently develop the interface technology through which the aliens operated the ship. The fact was that the apparatus only functioned in interaction with the brain of the alien. However, this failure did not hinder the development of another artifact from Roswell, the charred chip. The small object, measuring about 20 to 50 square centimeters, had 2 wires protruding from it. In the center was a small indentation with thin wires, which researchers believed held crystalline plates. Philip Corso, a former military intelligence officer, claimed that he brought this object to the Bell Laboratory, where the transistor was created 14 years prior. According to him, the scientists at that laboratory were able to study and reproduce an extraterrestrial microchip. He pondered what might have happened if such a thing had indeed taken place. "I think the following. In a very short time, the world would have radically changed," he shared his thoughts. Corso emphasized that after the creation of integrated circuits in the early 60s, this is exactly what occurred. Electronic devices, from cellular phones to portable computers, became a reality. Corso also asserted that the Roswell microchip was damaged during the crash, but he had another extraterrestrial object that was fully functional. He knew from reports that when people shone this object around, it caused ignition at the place it was directed. "I knew something about this," he said, referring to secret military reports that suggested this artifact from Roswell was a kind of cutting tool that could be used in various fields. At Hughes Air Force Base in the late 50s and early 60s, researchers were working on the first laser equipment for military aviation. However, engineers faced difficulties in creating truly operational equipment. According to Corso, he showed them the extraterrestrial cutting tool, which accelerated the development process. After 1960, people found new ways to create lasers, he noted, emphasizing how science and technology evolved. Corso also mentioned that his filing cabinet contained other treasures from the Roswell cache, among which were glass tubes that glowed with multicolored lights. "I sent them to the Bell Laboratory," he said, adding that it was then that the first steps were taken towards the greatest discovery in the field of fiber optics. Many UFO researchers built theories that the alien spacecraft had no wires but was woven with fiber optics. The transmission of information using light, as it turned out, was not a new technology. Its emergence dated back to 1880, when Alexander Bell experimented with a device he named the photophone. Most people have never heard of this, but at that time, serious scientists believed that the photophone was a more impressive invention than the telephone, Corso noted. This device allowed for the transmission of a voice signal through a beam of light. Corso believed that humanity had been unable to transmit data using light because scientists could not find a way for a beam of light to bend around corners. However, he claimed that the Roswell artifacts helped to solve this issue. "This is glass fiber," and they said, "Wow, light really bends around the corner," he recalled. Researchers concluded that this happens because light is somewhat packed in a sheath. Cladding, packaging, this is the key discovery, he emphasized. Although fiber optics came into widespread use only in the 1970s, UFO researchers believe that it was the cladding in this alien artifact that made the development of terrestrial fiber optic technology possible. Corso also studied super-strong fibers that, according to his military reports, were part of the flight suits of aliens. "The main thing that struck me about this material was the thread that I could not cut even with a blade," he shared, emphasizing that despite its simple appearance, this fiber possessed astonishing properties. In his book, Philip Corso speculates about the composition of the fibers used in the alien flight suit. He asserts that these materials were likely very vulnerable but protected against incredible energy loads due to their superstrength. Corso describes that the aliens did not just wear a suit made of such fibers but wrapped themselves in it, creating something like a cocoon. Corso became interested in the possibility of using these fibers to develop super-strong bulletproof vests for the military and law enforcement. He reports that the military transferred the material to the University of Colorado with the aim of reproducing this technology. As Corso predicted, a significant breakthrough in the creation of super-strong materials based on polymer technologies occurred in the mid-1960s, similar to the molecules from which the alien material was made. In 1965, Kevlar was invented, a material that began to be used in bulletproof vests, and, according to Corso, could withstand stronger impacts than the alien sample. It cannot be denied that Corso's period of work in the Pentagon coincided with a technological explosion in the United States. Corso's supporters argue that alien technologies played an important role in this process. However, many see the situation differently. In his bestseller, The Day After Roswell, Lieutenant Colonel Corso claims that he introduced extraterrestrial technologies discovered in 1947 in Roswell into the realm of American military technologies. His opponents believe that the breakthrough in the 1960s was not the achievement of a single individual and occurred without the involvement of aliens. Some prefer to think that one heroic figure ushered us into a new world of advanced technologies obtained from flying saucers. This sounds, of course, enticing, but considering the number of major scientific and research programs, the reality was quite different. For example, the nuclear engine program, which employed 3,500 people and spent $100 million a year, required significant resources to develop new technology. Corso claimed that the transition from theory to practical implementation of the laser occurred after studying a device found among the wreckage in Roswell. However, for historians of science, this seems like science fiction. The laser is an example of an invention that did not arise suddenly. The history of the laser began in 1951 when physicist Charles Townes was strolling through Washington. He had an epiphany, but the invention itself did not appear until years later. Townes recalls, "I woke up early in the morning with a worry about work. We were unable to make any progress. There was still time before breakfast, so I went for a walk in the park. Suddenly I said to myself, wait a minute, we can take molecules, the whole set of molecules, and have them all in an excited state with excess energy." He wrote down his ideas and soon began working on the project. It took him 2 years and $50,000 before he could assemble the first laser, which was actually not a laser in the conventional sense. The first laser apparatus used microwaves, not visible light. A laser operating in the light spectrum was created only in 1960, 9 years after Professor Townes sketched his first notes. As for the decisive role of aliens in this discovery, according to Townes, no, aliens had nothing to do with laser technology. He adds that, unfortunately, aliens did not help humanity. While the development of laser technologies was slow and difficult, integrated circuits evolved much faster. However, the most significant progress was achieved by scientists after Corso's retirement. In 1971, a true breakthrough occurred in the field of technology when Ted Hoff, an engineer, developed the concept of placing an entire microprocessor on a single piece of silicon. This step led to the creation of the computer chip, which, as Hoff emphasizes, has nothing to do with little green men. The primary advantage of the integrated circuit lies in its ability to control the flow of electrons, and in some cases, even their absence. Hoff began his research in this area in 1968. However, he disagrees with Philip Corso's assertion that the earthly version of the chip emerged thanks to an extraterrestrial sample found at the site of the crash near Roswell. Hoff notes that if any crash had occurred, there would likely have been destruction that could have complicated the investigation of the equipment. He also emphasizes that even if some equipment ended up in the hands of researchers without the context of its use, they would not have been able to understand what it was intended for. Hoff argues that to recreate integrated circuits, as Corso claims, an electron scanning microscope would be required, which was invented only in 1966. Even today, to examine such a device, powerful equipment is needed, as an ordinary optical microscope would not yield the desired results. Hoff expresses doubt that anyone at that time could have understood what this device was. Corso also claimed that scientists were aided by extraterrestrial fiber optic cables. However, science historians refute this, pointing out that the creation of fiber optic technologies required years of effort from various scientific disciplines. This idea began to develop in 1965 when lasers emerged, and the commercial potential of fiber optics was recognized. Soon after, a group of investors launched a project in Corning, which led to the creation of fiber optics in 1970. The focused laser beam significantly improved signal strength, and researchers in Corning developed a glass-like variety of molten silicon capable of transmitting much more information than copper wire. Thus, fiber optics became commercially successful 10 years after Corso, by his own claim, accelerated the emergence of this technology. However, the real breakthrough achieved by Don Keck, Peter Schultz, and Bob Maurer in Corning was the creation of a new method for producing glass. Corso also claimed that he contributed to a quantum leap in the field of image enhancement technology. However, historians of science note that the technologies that turn night into day have been developed over the course of decades. The beginning of this process can be traced back to the 40s, when Allied forces in the Pacific region had devices that enhanced images. The first night vision device, created by the Germans during World War II, used thermal imaging, converting thermal energy into the visible spectrum with the help of infrared rays. By the early 1960s, William Spicer, a researcher in the Defense Department, developed image enhancement technology, and scientists at Fort Belvoir continued his work. Image enhancement devices do not require additional light and function similarly to radio receivers, receiving and amplifying light waves. Today, image intensifiers are small enough to be made into glasses capable of amplifying light up to 35,000 times. Scientists assert that even if Corso had indeed possessed an alien image intensifier, its demonstration in the 60s would not have accelerated the development of this technology, as the necessary level of technology was achieved very slowly. The actual creation of night vision devices was the result of truly outstanding engineering developments. Moreover, Corso's super-strong fibers, according to technology experts, did not originate from alien spacesuits, but were the result of years of research by scientist Stephanie Kwolek, who worked at DuPont. In 1965, she learned to create super-strong chains of atoms, and by 1971, Kevlar appeared on the market. The theory that something similar to Kevlar was dropped from a flying saucer amazes me. It seems offensive to a person like Stephanie Kwolek, who invested tremendous effort and years of her life, as well as significant intellectual potential, to uncover these secrets of nature. Furthermore, some skeptics argue that Colonel Corso simply did not have sufficient technical training to lead any technology recovery program. I have read some materials written many years ago and realized that this has nothing to do with high technology. I have worked in companies such as General Electric, Westinghouse, General Motors, TRW Systems, and McDonnell Douglas, with many outstanding scientists and engineers. I myself am a physicist. In what Corso wrote, I found nothing that indicated his knowledge, skills, talent, or qualifications. Corso responded to this by stating that his team of high-class scientists helped him interpret the findings in Roswell. I did not have any special training or qualifications for this. Technology has become very complex, but fortunately, we worked with German scientists. I was familiar with all of them. Those who doubt Corso's identity also question his rank. They believe that a mere lieutenant colonel could not lead such serious projects. I think it is very indicative of the military's attitude towards him that he was not even a colonel, but just a lieutenant colonel, despite all the years of service. Nevertheless, there are people who claim to know how the U.S. military machine functions and support Corso. In those times, a lieutenant colonel had much more power and held a higher position than modern lieutenant colonels. Even today, lieutenant colonels possess significant knowledge about important tactical and strategic goals and operations. The military personnel with whom Corso claims he worked say that no study or development of extraterrestrial technologies took place. There are no reports, directives, or documents that could confirm Corso's statements about the reproduction of extraterrestrial technologies. However, Corso's supporters argue that the lack of documentary evidence is explained by a very compelling reason. Among those who believe that an extraterrestrial craft crashed near Roswell, there is a consensus on one issue. The American government systematically hides the truth. The government of the United States and other governments around the world make tremendous efforts to keep this matter secret and to shroud it in an aura of mystery. Philip Corso says that he also had to keep his technology recovery program a secret. We could not discuss it. We made any decisions and could not talk about it outside our circle. Everything is going well for us. We have the authority. We have funding for various projects. As for Corso's contribution to scientific progress, skeptics argue that the technology he allegedly advanced was ready to emerge anyway. As evidence, they cite the brain-controlled headband, the only extraterrestrial technology that Corso did not mention as being used on Earth. Soon, this technology will become a reality without his involvement. Since the 1970s, scientists have been experimenting with electroencephalograms that reflect brain radiation, hoping to establish feedback and influence human behavior. People can use games based on electroencephalograms to learn to control the states of their brains. However, mind control technologies have advanced even further. In 2004, researchers received permission to test tiny brain implants that allowed disabled individuals to control computers with their own thoughts. Meanwhile, UFO researchers believe that the government will forever lift the veil of secrecy over the facts related to Roswell. If the Egyptians suddenly acquired cell phones or something similar, then one could speak of intervention. Despite the controversial figure of Lieutenant Colonel Philip Corso and his contentious ideas, his contribution to the legend and knowledge about UFOs cannot be underestimated. The military, the Pentagon, and the government of the United States do not grant such powers lightly. Corso was highly valued and respected in his circles. "What do I have to lose at my age?" he pondered. "I must pass this on to my children and grandchildren because I do not know how much longer I will last." This thought haunted him for many years. He often repeated to himself, "Why me? Why do I have all this information?" Corso recalled that his father used to say, "Today, only 10% of this story is known. The rest remains a secret." Ains.